Welcome to Echoes of the Unknown, the podcast where we'll be exploring some of the world's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. I'm Jack Montgomery, and today we're looking back at the Carroll A mystery, which represents one of maritime history's most baffling disappearances. It centers on a massive American commercial schooner that was discovered abandoned off North Carolina's coast in 1921. What makes this a story about a ghost ship is that all members of the crew had somehow vanished without a trace. The Carroll A was built in Bath, Maine in 1919 by the G.G. Deering Company for commercial use. The owner of the company named the ship after his son. The 255-foot, five-masted vessel represented the twilight era of large wooden sailing cargo ships in America, and it was designed specifically for hauling substantial loads of coal. The schooner had been in service for only a year when it began what would be its final, fateful voyage. The journey began routinely enough. On July 19, 1920, the ship sailed from Puerto Rico and arrived at Newport News, Virginia, to pick up a cargo of coal for delivery to Brazil. On August 22nd, the schooner departed Norfolk for Rio de Janeiro. The ship was captained by William Merritt, a hero of World War I, who had been cited for bravery under fire for saving his entire crew when his previous command, the Deering-built five-masted schooner Dorothy B. Barrett, was sunk by a German submarine off Cape May, New Jersey in 1918. Merritt's son, Sewall, was his first mate, and he had a 10-man crew made up entirely of Scandinavians, mostly Danes. On August 26th, the Carroll A. Deering cleared the Virginia Capes bound for Brazil, but Captain Merritt soon fell seriously ill, and the schooner turned back and put into the port of Lewis, Delaware, to drop off Merritt and his son. The Deering Company recruited Captain Willis Wormel, a retired 66-year-old veteran sea captain, to replace him on the voyage to Brazil. Charles McClellan was hired on as first mate. The ship, with Wormel in command, set sail again for Rio de Janeiro on September 8th, arriving there and delivering its cargo without incident. Wormel gave his crew leave and met with a Captain Goodwin, an old friend who captained another cargo vessel that was docked in the port. Wormel expressed concern to Goodwin about his crew, stating that they were unruly and he didn't trust them. However, he did say that he trusted the engineer, Herbert Bates, with whom Goodwin was also acquainted. The Carroll A. Deering left Rio de Janeiro on December 2nd and stopped for supplies in Barbados. While there, Wormel spoke with Captain Hugh Norton of the Augustus W. Snow and told him that he was having trouble with his crew, especially First Mate Charles McClellan, stating that he was habitually drunk while ashore and mistreated the crew. While the ship was docked there, McClellan got drunk in town and complained to Captain Norton that he could not discipline the crew without Captain Wormel interfering. He also said that he had to do all the navigation himself owing to Wormel's poor eyesight. Later, Captain Norton, his first mate, and another captain were in the Continental Cafe and heard McClellan say, "I'll get the captain before we get to Norfolk, I will." At some point, McClellan was arrested due to his drunkenness. However, on January 9th, Captain Wormel bailed him out of jail, and the Carroll A. Deering immediately set sail for Hampton Roads, Virginia. The schooner was next sighted on January 28th when it hailed the Cape Lookout lightship off North Carolina. It was a U.S. Coast Guard lightship anchored near the Shoals off Cape Lookout, which used a steam fog signal to warn ships from the dangerous waters. The lightship's keeper, Captain Jacobson, reported that a tall, thin man with reddish hair and a foreign accent, speaking through a megaphone, told him the vessel had lost its anchors in a storm off Cape Fear and asked that the ship's owners, the G.G. Deering Company, be notified. Jacobson took note of this, but his radio was out, so he was unable to report it. He also noticed that the crew seemed to be milling around on the quarterdeck of the ship, an area where they were usually not allowed. The following afternoon, the crew of another vessel transiting the area spotted the schooner sailing a course that would take it directly onto the treacherous Diamond Shoals sandbars. However, they saw no one on the ship's decks and did not attempt to hail the vessel, assuming her crew would spot the Cape Hatteras lighthouse or the Diamond Shoals lightship and change course to avoid wrecking on the shoals. On January 31st, the Carroll A Deering was sighted at approximately 6:30 a.m. by surfman C.P. Brady, who was on lookout duty at the U.S. Coast Guard station at Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. The vessel was hard aground with all sails set on the outer edge of Diamond Shoals. The shoals, which extend offshore from Cape Hatteras, were notorious as a common site of shipwrecks for centuries and are known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Rescue ships were unable to approach the vessel owing to bad weather and rough seas. The ship was not boarded until February 4th, after being battered by the surf for several days, and it became clear that the schooner had been completely abandoned. Her steering equipment was found to be damaged, with the wheel shattered and the rudder disengaged from its stock. All of the ship's logbooks and navigation equipment were gone, along with the crew's personal effects and both of the ship's 2 lifeboats. Perhaps most eerily, in the vessel's galley, it appeared that certain foodstuffs were being prepared for the next day's meal at the time of the abandonment. A 6-toed ship's cat remained the sole living occupant. The U.S. government launched an extensive investigation into the disappearance of the crew. 5 departments of the government, Commerce, Treasury, Justice, Navy, and State, looked into the case. Herbert Hoover, then Secretary of Commerce, was intrigued by the fact that several other vessels of various nationalities, most notably the sulfur freighter Hewitt, had also disappeared in roughly the same area. Although most of these vessels were later revealed to have been sailing in the vicinity of a series of particularly powerful hurricanes, the Hewitt and Carroll A. Deering were proven to have been sailing away from the area of the storm at the time. Hoover's assistant, Lawrence Ritchie, was placed in charge of the investigation. Ritchie tried to chart what happened to the vessel between its last sighting at Cape Lookout and its running aground at Diamond Shoals by reading the log books of the Coast Guard lightships stationed in those areas. Despite extensive investigations by the U.S. Coast Guard and Department of Justice, no crew members were ever found, and no definitive cause was established. The Coast Guard cutter Manning attempted to salvage the schooner, but found this impossible. The ship was declared a hazard to navigation and was destroyed using dynamite on March 4, 2021, to prevent it from becoming a danger to other vessels, taking many potential clues with it to the bottom of the sea. A portion of the ship's bow later drifted ashore on Ocracoke Island. The investigation was officially closed in late 1922 without an official finding on the incident. However, several theories have emerged over the decades. The first, strongly advocated by the U.S. government, particularly the National Weather Bureau, is that a series of powerful hurricanes, known to have been raging in the Atlantic, was the cause of the disappearance. Undermining this theory, however, is the fact that the Carroll A. Deering was heading away from the path of these storms at the time. In any case, several authors, including Larry Kusha and Richard Weiner, have pointed out that the state of the ship indicates an orderly, rather than panicked, evacuation. Another theory pointed to piracy. Captain O.W. Parker of the United States Marine Shipping Board certainly believed that a group of pirates was responsible. He stated that, in his opinion, piracy without a doubt still exists as it has since the days of the Phoenicians. Captain Wormel's widow was a particularly strong advocate of this theory. However, no real evidence of this theory emerged, and no suspected pirates were ever caught. A third hypothesis, similar to the above, speculates that a group of liquor smugglers working out of the Bahamas stole the ship to use as a rum-running vessel. Keep in mind that the incident took place during the Prohibition era. The Carroll A Deering was large enough, according to Richard Weiner's Ghost Ships, to carry roughly $1 million worth of liquor in her hold. On the other hand, it is doubtful that such a conspicuous, easily identifiable, and comparatively slow vessel would constitute a choice target for smugglers. No evidence supporting this speculation has ever emerged. Yet another theory blamed the incident on mutiny, Wormel's known conflict with his first mate and derisive comments towards his crew while in Rio de Janeiro suggested that something may have been amiss between the captain and his men on the voyage. Captain Jacobson at Cape Lookout certainly thought it odd. After all, the man who hailed his vessel was definitely not Captain Wormel, and he was not an officer by all accounts. Senator Frederick Hale of Maine advocated this theory, stating it was a plain case of mutiny. Discontent with the captain could certainly have caused a mutiny of the crew, but once again, nothing definitive has ever been proven. Despite all these competing theories, no official explanation for the disappearance of the crew of the schooner was ever offered. The case remains compelling for several reasons. The ship was modern and well documented, yet an entire crew vanished without a trace. The scene aboard suggested hasty abandonment, rather than catastrophic disaster. The combination of missing persons, absent logbooks, and vanished equipment creates an investigative perfect storm. The treacherous location off the North Carolina coast complicated investigation efforts, while the passage of time has long since eroded potential clues and access to any potential eyewitnesses. The Carroll A Deering has become legendary along the Outer Banks, where it's known as the ghost ship of Diamond Shoals. Its story highlights the sea's unforgiving nature and the limitations of early 20th century maritime investigations. With minimal radio communications and vast remote locations, much could happen unwitnessed and unrecorded. The incident serves as a reminder of how even well-equipped vessels with experienced crews can fall victim to the sea's dangers. It poses deeper questions about the intersection of human error, mechanical failure, and natural forces in maritime disasters. The case continues to captivate maritime historians and mystery enthusiasts, representing a unique moment when a fully functional ship simply lost its entire crew without explanation. After more than a century, the essential questions persist. Did the crew abandon ship in lifeboats and perish in rough seas? Did something more sinister occur? Did mechanical failure trigger panic? We have the physical evidence but lack the human testimony that might complete the puzzle. The mystery endures not from lack of investigation, but rather from an absence of conclusive evidence pointing to any single explanation. It remains a testament to the limits of human knowledge when confronted with the vast, inscrutable nature of the sea, and stands to this day as one of the most enduring maritime mysteries in American history. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Echoes of the Unknown. If you found this story compelling, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with fellow mystery lovers. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, every unanswered question is just waiting for the right clue to rise to the surface.